What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? AZD here, and in this video we're going to talk about the CPI data, the January inflation data that just came out, and we're going to talk about what these numbers mean and more about it. Now, the consumer price rose 0.5% in January, like we said, and now that's at 6.4% annually, according to the Labor Department Consumer Price Index release on Tuesday, February 14th. A jump in inflation, which could encourage the Federal Reserve to further raise interest rates. So we got to watch out for that, because the Federal Reserve just raised its interest rate by 25 basis point, 0.25% at their last meeting back in January. And now with the CPI data coming out with this inflation, it's kind of a little bit under, but at the same time, it rose for the month of January. So right now, they're going to be looking at that, looking at the data to kind of figure out exactly which way they're going to go with the basis point for the next meeting. According to reports by The Hill, consumer core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices. So this is not going to be including the energy as well as the food prices. And we all know that energy and food prices is going up probably even more than what the inflation numbers are. So the food and energy prices excluding food and energy prices came in at 0.4% for a month-to-month basis and 5.6% for annual. The core, that's excluding the food and energy and some other things, came in at 5.6%. But remember, the annual from January of last year to January this year is 6.4%, with an increase by 0.5% for this month. So the annual inflation continues to decline from the high of 9.1% that we had back in June, and that was a 40-year high. So that's doing good. According to some analysts and some economists out there. But still, the pace of monthly price grew accelerated in January from December, when prices rose 0.1%. Food prices rose 0.5% in January, while housing costs rose 0.7%, making up the bulk of the increase. So as we discussed in previous videos, rent is going up, mortgage is going up. So all of this will also have an impact on the CPI data, as well as how the Fed will look at the CPI data. The annual inflation figure, which came in slightly above analysts' expectations, may push the Fed into steeper or more interest rate hikes in an effort to slow the economy and reduce demands of goods and services. As discussed before, they're trying to increase the interest rate so people do not spend as much. And many are planning for them to do another 0.25%. But with these numbers, they're saying that it's not slowing up enough. And for the next meeting, some analysts are saying that they might go with 0.5%. So that'd be a 50 basis point increase at the next meeting. And the Federal Reserve saying that they're not doing any drawbacks, anything like that. They're not pulling any numbers back. That's because the Federal Reserve fund rate, they're trying to have the fund rate up to about 5.0 to 5.5 area. In that area for the federal fund rate, they want to have it in that area for the next year. So basically for the rest of 2023, we most likely will not see any decline in the interest rate. They will not be backtracking any of the interest rate. If anything, they probably pause it for a while to see how the data catch up, to see how the economy catch up to the rate that they increase, as well as just to see what the CPI data reacts to it. So earlier this month, the Fed rolls out its smallest rate hike since March of 2022. Did you hear that? So earlier this month, the Fed rolled out the smallest rate hike since March of 2022. So since March of 2022, they was doing 0.75%, 0.5%, another 0.75, all the way up to being that last month they just only rose at 0.5%. But the strategy could change if prices don't fall fast enough. So like we said, their next plan for the next two meetings is to do about 0.25%, but we might see a 0.5%. As reported and according to The Hill, Federal Governor Michelle Bowman said Monday the inflation continues to be much too high. She said additional rate hikes are necessary to bring inflation down to the Fed's 2%. So we're at 6.4%, and they have to bring it down to 2%. Looking at last time, it was 6.5% back in December, they rose the Fed rate by 0.25%, and they only see a decline by 0.1%. So might see some more, like Governor Michelle Bowman saying that there most likely will be more increase because the Fed is trying to get it down to the 2% target, even if they cause economic pain. So brace yourself for some economic pain because they're trying to get that inflation down to about 2%. And remind you, it's at 6.5%. Tightening monetary policy to lower inflation, I see the cost of risk of allowing inflation to persist as far greater, Bowman. So let's look at some of these numbers that came out in the CPI data. On the year, grocery prices are up 11.3%, energy prices are up 8.7%, and housing costs are up 7.9%, putting a dent in Americans' finances. I know a lot of people probably seen the current increase in rent, probably some increase in your mortgage, if not the mortgage, then the insurance, or the either the mortgage, the insurance, or the taxes. Going forward, inflation is unlikely to maintain its recent pace of deceleration, ZipRecruiter lead economist Simon Bober wrote in a note. The prices of used cars is one of the few areas where inflation is easing, where prices dropping 11.6% annually after skyrocketing in previous years. And like you remember back in the summertime, the interest rates on cars, on used cars, was going up like crazy. So a lot of people weren't buying used cars. They were actually even buying newer cars more than used cars. But now used cars inflation is continuing because, you know, people need more transportation at the time going by from point A to point B. So people are out buying these used cars, and those used cars are going up. But a good thing, the prices for those used cars is easing up, so we might have a better chance of seeing a better prices on used cars. So let's look a little closer to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the Consumer Price Index summary, which was released. The Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, CPI, rose 0.5% in January on a seasonal adjusted basis after increasing 0.1% in December. The U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics reported over the last 12 months, the all-item index increased 6.4% before seasonal adjustment. The index for shelter was by far the largest contributor to the monthly all-time increase, accounted for nearly half of the monthly all-time increase. Wow. The index of food, gasoline, and natural gas also contributed. The food index increased 0.5% over the month, with the food at home index price rise 0.4%. The energy index increased 2.0% over the month as all major energy components index rose over the month. The index of all items less food and energy rose 0.4% in January. Remember, food and energy is not in that one. Categories which increased in January include shelter, motor vehicle insurance, recreation, apparel, household furniture, and operating indexes. The indexes for used cars and trucks, medical care, and airlines fare were among those that decreased over the month. A lot of people not as traveling as much as they used to. People probably not even going to healthcare, dentists, doctors as much as they used to because of the increase of costs. So those costs are decreasing. So that's kind of a good thing to look at. The all-item index increased 6.4% for the 12 months ending January. This was the smallest 12-month increase since the period ending October 2021. The all-item less food and energy index rose 5.6% over the last 12 months, the smallest 12-month increase since December 2021. Kind of good news, but like the Fed said, they still might be some pain. They still might have to increase the federal fund rate. The energy index increased 8.7% for the 12 months ending January. The food index increased 10.1% over the last year. Wow. So ladies and gentlemen, you can also go to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics and check out some of this data and get some of these numbers for yourself and get an idea of what the economists look at, of what the Federal Reserve look at in order to adjust their federal fund rate and basis points. So once again, it's Ainsley D. Hope you got some value out of this, and I'll see you next time. Continue to be great. Peace.